Hi everyone, it's time for another bow build video, this time for Title Update 3.5. So Title Update 3 brought us Omega and AT Udra, both of which gave relevant gear for bow builds. Now before we get started, the usual disclaimer, the builds in this video are optimized against a specific set of assumptions which are in the video description, so they are more to be used as a guide rather than a definitive rule. Let's start with the bows themselves. Nothing has really changed since TU2, so we'll still be using the same ones. So pick the best elemental bow for your matchup and slot in the appropriate skills. In terms of bow skills, it's usually a combination of spread, critical boost, elemental attack, bandolier, and true shot. Now let's get into the armor builds. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to be using the Adrenaline Rush 3 amulet for all the builds. This is because there's no RNG involved and AR3 amulet is still very good. I will briefly talk about RNG amulets at the end of the video as well. The first armor build we'll look at is an all-rounder or comfort build. It does good damage, maxes stamina skills, and has a number of other utilities as well. So it takes the Udra helm, ray, gloves, Duna waist, and fills the rest with laggy pieces. In terms of damage, it's about 2.3% better than my previous all-rounder build. Now this build is slightly lower damage than the damage focused builds that we'll look at later, but the damage is actually not that much less. Next build is a more damage focused one. It uses the new Udra Gamma head and chest, which are very efficient for damage, laggy arms, Duna waist to complete guts, and laggy greaves, which is also very efficient. So this does about 2.5% more damage on average versus the all-rounder build. However, it doesn't have maximized stamina skills and requires either dash juice or black belt food to max constitution. Note that under this build, you can take the Udra Gamma waist as well. It does a tiny bit less damage under my assumptions, but is virtually identical. Now an alternate damage build, which is very close to the previous build. So it takes the Udra Gamma head and chest as usual. However, this takes Ray Gamma gloves and then the rest gore pieces. So gore is still good. In terms of damage, this is 0.1% on average higher than the previous damage build. It's also got Constitution 5, so you're not locked into black belt food. However, it has no stamina surge, so you may struggle a little bit in some matchups. If we consider multiplayer as well, then we can make use of Omega armor pieces because the Omega set bonus is really good and you can get extremely high uptimes on the buffs. So for a multiplayer DPS set, we can take the following. Again, Udra Gamma head and chest. Are you noticing a pattern yet? Omega gloves and waist, and finish off guts with Duna legs. In terms of damage, this is about 0.3% higher than the second damage build. It's also got maxed out constitution and 1 level of stamina surge. And as an added bonus, you also get Divine Blessing 2 as well for some defense. There is also an alternate multiplayer build which does slightly more damage. So this one takes the Omega head, Udra chest, Omega gloves, and Duna waist and legs. In terms of damage, it's about 0.3% higher than the first multiplayer build. The main trade-off is that it's only got Constitution 2, so you're forced into black belt food, which you may not want to do when playing with randoms. It's actually got more utility compared to the first multiplayer build as well. For Thunder matchups, you will need to use a different build to the previous ones. Because of laggy bows convert Thunder resistance skill, you want to maximize your Thunder resistance to get the most out of it. So the best build will be something with Udra Gamma head and chest, Ray Gamma gloves, and laggy waist and legs. This is higher damage than just slapping laggy bow onto the previous damage builds. In fact, it's about 3.3% higher than damage build 1. So Seregios Bow or Insurgent Bow deserves its own build because its blade scale coating is so strong. Now this is a raw build, so we can't use any of the previous builds which take multiple levels of burst, because levels of burst past the first one are very inefficient for raw damage. So the build here is taking Ray Gamma Helm, Udra Chest, Ray Gamma Gloves, and filling the rest with Gore. Now, without Blade Scale coating, this is going to be weaker than the other builds. However, if you have a good amount of Blade Scale coating uptime, then this becomes stronger than the elemental builds, even for their respective elemental matchups. However, the required uptime for Blade Scale to break even depends heavily on the monster's raw and elemental weaknesses. So I've included a couple of breakpoints just for reference. So against Arkveld, which is pretty much a raw matchup, you need 26% uptime on Blade Scale to break even with the best Artian elemental build, which is not a lot. Against Udra, you need about 54%, which is a bit higher, but still pretty reasonable. However, against Jhin, you need about 75%, which is getting into the infeasible territory. Note that these percentages don't take 1000 Dragon into account, which you probably do want to be using more when using Seregios Bow. So if you do take 1000 Dragons into account, these percentages, these break-even points should be lower, especially since we are actively taking Special Ammo Burst 2 on Seregios Bow. Now a short note on RNG Talismans. I've actually done a video of this before, so check that out if you're interested in some examples and more details. But in a nutshell, you really want to be looking for good rank 8 talismans in order to beat the AR3 talisman. So what is a good rank 8 talisman? It's basically a talisman with all offensive skills. So I've listed the main relevant offensive skills on the screen here. Now some good RNG talismans of lower ranks can still match and even beat the AR3 talisman, but generally speaking you really want to be looking for the R8 talismans. To wrap up, here is a summarized damage comparison of the various builds that we've talked about. I've left Seregios Bow off this because it's just too variable to account for. As you can see, the difference between the builds is actually not a lot, so just use what you're comfortable with. And to be honest, if you throw together any reasonable build, the damage is going to be pretty close to some of these anyway. That's all for now, thanks for watching, see you next time.